to keep it, and therefore I need to seek for life as a free gift from God through faith in the promised seed because I have no other option. In his treatise on the law and gospel, John Calhoun writes this. He says, "The law accuses, condemns, and terrifies the awakened sinner. And so it urges him to flee speedily for refuge to Jesus Christ, who is the real cause of one's becoming dead to the law." In other words, when I see, hear, and know and understand the law, I am awakened to the fact that I am guilty, and if there is any hope for me being declared not guilty, I need to become dead to the law, and it's only in Jesus Christ that I can do that I might truly live. Now, this is the thing about the angels as an intermediary. It seems rather difficult, but it's really not as confusing as maybe it appears. Paul is pointing out that angels were present and had a role in the connection with the giving of the law to Moses. So Moses was the intermediary that he's talking about. So we have the law of God ordained through angels in the hand of an intermediary. This seems to be a direct reference to Deuteronomy 5:5, where Moses says to the Israelites, "I stood between the Lord and you at the time to declare to you the word of the Lord." So Paul has a rather simple lesson for the Galatians here. The law given at Sinai was from God through his holy angels by the agency of Moses. Thus it is holy, righteous, and good. However, it is inferior to the promise given to Abraham because while the law came indirectly from God to his people, the promise that God made with Abraham, and thus to all of Abraham's offspring, was directly from the word of the Lord himself. So, think of it this way. If you work for a large corporation, and your manager reports to the vice president, who reports to the president, who reports to the CEO, and your manager comes to you and says, "The CEO wanted me to pass along to all of the employees the new policy." That's going to come a little bit different to us than if you get a visit in your office from the CEO himself, right? Getting a third-hand message from the CEO is far different than the CEO sitting at your desk with you, eyeball to eyeball, to deliver the message. But when the message is of supreme importance, he wants to deliver it directly. So also, the gospel of salvation by grace alone is so precious to the heart of God, to whom he's giving salvation. It means nothing less than the agonizing death of his only Son, that he appeals to each of us directly and personally, saying, "My son, my daughter, give me your heart." And so the gospel is the message of God directly to you. Not through an intermediary, not through angels, but from God himself. And God himself, not just in word, as if that's not enough, but in the action of sending his only Son to live for us and to die for us and to be raised from the dead for us, that all of this might be true, that by faith alone we might truly live. Why? Because we cannot fulfill the law that Jesus himself fulfilled on our behalf. And so Paul goes on in explaining this. In verse 20, he shows us that Moses was great, but God is far greater. He says now an intermediary implies more than one, but God is one. Now this seems an odd verse, and if you look around at the different way that scholars have tried to understand it, you'll find about 500 different options. So instead of giving you all the different ways to look at it, I want to simply point to what seems most fitting given the context of Paul's argument here. Paul is most likely stating the distinction between the two covenants he's remembered. Remember a few weeks ago as we looked at this, the covenant of works and the covenant of grace, the law and the gospel. The law was given to the Israelites through Moses, the intermediary, but the promise was